You want to know which wide receivers you should start or sit in week 11? We're going to go game by game, talking about every wide receiver you need to know about to help you win in fantasy by setting your lineups. Now, don't forget, we still have 4 teams on bye this week: the Falcons, Saints, Patriots, and Colts. Before we get to the matchups, let's talk about the receivers who are no doubt must starts if you have them: Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, and Justin Jefferson if he plays. First up is the Bengals taking on the Ravens. Before we get to that and talk about the wide receivers, I need to remind you that if you haven't tried Underdog Fantasy, this is the perfect time to do so. Besides that deposit match that you are guaranteed to get if you use promo code ENDGAME, you can take advantage of the Thursday night pick'em for new customers. Joe Burrow going higher than zero point 0.5 total yards. He gets 1 yard, you win that pick, and you can combine it with any other pick, and we'll give you some of our favorite picks in just a minute. So on Thursday, the Bengals will take on the Ravens. Jamar Chase is good. T. Higgins, probably not playing again. So let's start with Tyler Boyd. He actually did have himself a pretty good game last week. Can we trust him?
Trust is a strong word, but they need him. T. Higgins out. They're on the road. They're probably going to have to throw the ball a lot. So I think, again, Tyler Boyd is startable.
Prefer him in PPR. You're not sure about his chances to score. He didn't score last week. He's a guy who depends on that target volume, but I guess he'll get it. So assuming this isn't a disappointing low-scoring game, I'll say you can flex him. And then we also need to talk about Trent Irwin. It was kind of a popular, streaming option last week, and he paid off. Early touchdown. Can he pay off again?
Maybe. He feels like he probably needs a touchdown. I'll say if you need him, you can start him.
Yeah, we've seen he has upside, but we can't just assume he'll do something in this game. It is a tough venue, so again, a risky streamer with upside. Zay Flowers did kind of bounce back last week, but again, we just haven't seen a big game from him. Does it happen this week?
Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. But I think he's at least a guy, again, he's startable.
Yeah. He's like a floor play in PPR leagues. That's just kind of where I have him. Now, Odell Beckham, maybe not the highest floor, but he has scored in consecutive weeks. Do you think he's coming on?
He scored in garbage time 2 weeks ago. Last week, took a random slant to the house like old Odell, which was actually cool to see, right? Like old times, but I'm not banking on that. I'm not starting him.
No, I can't get carried away. He did take it to the house, but it's not like he had blazing speed on it. I'm kind of surprised he didn't get caught, to be honest. So, yeah, if you're desperate in a standard league, maybe, but that's about it. Now, Cowboys are going to take on the Panthers this week. It's a road game, but still, I feel like I want to just start everybody on this Cowboys passing offense. Well, let's go player by player. Start with Brandon Cooks. After last week, are you convinced?
I'm convinced enough to say if you need him, you can start him. I'm not chasing that one big game where they destroyed the Giants. Although they'll probably destroy the Panthers, but still, I'm going to only put him in the start him if you need him category.
Yeah, you can't go out and say, well, you have to start him based on last week. That was last week. But I will say this. It looks like the Eagles game where he did nothing, caught like one pass, looks like the outlier because he's scored 3 times in the last 4 games. This whole offense has looked great. I got to consider him at least a strong flex option. Michael Gallup also scored a long touchdown. What about him? Is he interesting?
Barely. That was very late in the game. It was Dak, but they were still just crushing them. I don't know. This feels too deep for me. I can't do it.
Yeah, I definitely feel less confident about Gallup just because the target share hasn't been there like it has been with Cook. So, yeah, I'm probably just not going to start him. Now on the other side, there's Adam Thielen, probably the only Panther even worth considering at this point. Is he still a strong option?
Yeah, I don't think we can consider him a strong option anymore. Since the bye week, it hasn't been the same. And, man, Bryce Young looks terrible. This offense looks terrible. I guess what you're hoping for here is garbage time. But even then, it's really banking on it. But I still think he's startable.
Can't say he's not startable because he gets so many targets. But we have to recognize, look, you probably should have sold high on Thielen a couple weeks ago when you could have. You could flex him, but I will say I'm feeling down about him because not just the matchup against the Cowboys, because they're obviously really tough against receivers, but his numbers have gone down the last 3 games. He's averaging only 47 yards. And so not only do I say he's just a risky flex option, I will say I'm taking the lower on him. If you look at Underdog, those pick'ems they have early in the week, right now he's at 68.5 yards. I don't even think he'll get to that because, again, he hasn't reached that mark for the most part over the last couple of games. This Panthers offense somehow is getting worse. But look at the Cowboys defense. They have only allowed 3 wide receivers all year to go over that 68-yard mark. And if you combine that pick with the Joe Burrow gimme pick going over 1 yard, then I feel like you have a pretty good chance to pay out. All right, now the Steelers at the Browns. Not the most exciting pass offenses. Well, let's talk about Deontay Johnson. I mean, he had been really good until last week. Does he bounce back?
Yeah, I think he should. Everybody has down weeks. You can't just all of a sudden give up on the guy. He was really good the 2 weeks before that. I still think he's a good start.
Yeah, it's, again, a really tough matchup, but still, he gets the volume. You're still pretty much rolling with him, especially in full PPR leagues. He's pretty much a solid wide receiver, too. George Pickens has been anything but ever since Johnson came back. I mean, can you even consider him at this point?
I mean, yeah, you can consider him. He, I guess, still has upside maybe, but more like a start him if you need him kind of guy.
Yeah, look, I have Pickens in several leagues. I'm benching him in most of them because last week he was in a decent spot, did nothing again. They're just not taking those downfield shots. I doubt they do it against the Browns here. I'm just going to bench Pickens this week. And Amari Cooper, again, producing. I have a feeling that we're just going to keep starting him.
Yeah, why not? I mean, 2 games in a row, he's been good. He gets down the field looks. He doesn't even need like a ton of volume, right? 3 or 4 catches and he can have a good day. So I think Amari Cooper, a good start this week.
Yeah, what we learned when Deshaun Watson is healthy and in and plays the whole game, Cooper is really good. So right now, I think Cooper is just pretty much a must start. And then Elijah Moore, I mean, I'm not completely convinced that maybe we'll see the Elijah Moore we thought we were going to get, but I see some signs. Is there enough hope to make you consider him this week?
Not yet. Not yet. I need to see more than one, random game like that. So I'm going to bench him again this week.
Yeah, I did mention this in the waiver wire video. I would say you consider picking him up to stash, not necessarily to start. I mean, maybe if you're really desperate for a receiver, but I would say let's wait and see. All right, next we got the Bears at the Lions. Hard to say right now what to do with DJ Moore because we're not sure who the quarterback will be. So at this point, Fields or Bagent, what do you do with Moore?
Well, if it's Bagent, I mean, you can barely even consider starting him, especially in this matchup. If it's Fields, I think he's at least, start him if you need him territory.
Yeah, we're going to just continue saying what we've been saying. If Bagent's the starter, there's really no reason to start Moore. There's just no upside. I feel like if Fields starts and I feel good enough about him being healthy and playing the whole game, I'm going to try to start Moore for the most part because the Lions' defense has been a little more leaky in the secondary these days. So Moore should still be a startable candidate with a healthy Fields. And then Detroit, well, the sun god is still shining. What about Jameson Williams? He's on the field a lot, but is he going to produce at some point?
I mean, maybe, but not in my lineup, so I'm not starting him.
No, he's not on my rosters, and he's definitely not in my lineup this week. All right, Chargers at the Packers. It might seem like it's all Keenan Allen, that receiving core, because it mostly is. But what about Quentin Johnston? Scored his first touchdown. You think he's going to keep coming on?
I mean, he has to. They don't really have any other options, but this isn't a great matchup against his Packers secondary. You kind of feel like you need a touchdown from him, which, it could happen. So start him only if you need him.
Yeah, I'll put him right there. At least I can say this is the first week where I finally feel like, okay, he could be a streaming option. But again, I'm not, going out of my way to put him in my lineups. Now, what about Jalen Guyton? He's back. He also scored a touchdown. Is he any more interesting to you?
Not really. Very risky here. Not doing it.
Well, I kind of put him right there with QJ. I'd just say he's a streaming option if you want some upside, maybe hope for that long shot. But that's it. All right, now the Packers finally showed some signs of life on offense in the passing game. Let's start with Jaden Reed. Led the team in receiving, got that long touchdown. Is that enough to really put him in the fantasy relevant category?
Not for me. I mean, we see these random games every week. It's still the Packers offense. It's still Jordan Love. I'm not doing it.
I mean, I like Reed. I think he's a good player. I wish I could feel better about Jordan Love. He did show some improvement at least. I'm glad the offense was more aggressive. I at least think he is streamable if you need a fourth receiver, a flex play, because he can make those big plays, and the Chargers defense isn't that great. And then what about Romeo Dobbs? Any higher or lower for you?
I mean, I think he's got to be lower. He scored a touchdown and still barely even hit double-digit PPR points, just not getting the yardage here. So if I'm not starting Reed, I'm definitely not starting Dobbs.
It's really weird. Yeah, Dobbs, like, he scores touchdowns, but he doesn't get those deep shots. It was supposed to be the opposite. He was supposed to be like this deep home run kind of threat, and they're treating him like a tight end or something. So, like, sure, you could flex him in a standard league, but that's it. And then there's Christian Watson. Like, what do we do at this point?
Drop him. Definitely don't start him.
Yeah, I mean, he's been droppable for a couple of weeks. Now it's like, what's the point of holding on to him? Yeah, until we see major turnaround, you can't start him. All right, Cardinals at Texans. We got Kyler Murray back, so we didn't see great numbers from Hollywood. Does it get better this week?
I mean, he almost has to get better this week. It's not a good matchup against this Texans secondary, so I'm just going to kind of put him in the startable category.
Yeah, I feel like, he's always startable because he's a guy who could always hit that home run. The Texans secondary has been pretty good this year, but I also wonder if this turns into a sneaky shootout kind of game. So I'd say he's a wide receiver 3 with upside for more. And then what about Michael Wilson? He's been banged up. Do you think that he can make some sort of connection with Kyler this week?
I mean, maybe, but it feels very risky not starting him.
Yeah, this is too risky. Let's see it first. So can't start Michael Wilson. Now you can and probably want to start some Texans receiver, but who is it? Let's start with the guy who didn't play last week, Nico Collins. Not sure if he'll go. If he does, do you put him right back in your lineup?
I think you kind of have to. It's a good matchup. Didn't sound like the injury was anything serious, so I think if Nico plays, he's a good start.
Well, you know what I say. If the Texans are at home, I'm playing Nico, and it's the Cardinals. Yeah, if he's good to go, I want to start him for sure. And then what about Tank Dell? I mean, with or without Nico, now he keeps scoring. Is he a guy who's almost a solid every week starter?
Yeah, I mean, especially in this matchup here, he's got touchdown upside. He's involved. I think another guy who's a good start.
Yep, I think the risk factor is pretty much gone with Tank at this point. Solid start. And then there's the guy who's actually led the team in receiving for 2 weeks in a row with huge games, Noah Brown. I mean, how high do we have to be on him?
I think we got to be pretty high on him. Again, it's a great matchup. He's been great. And look, he was great in the game with Nico and Tank Dell, and he was great in the game without Nico. I don't think it matters. So again, I'm going to say they're at home. They're throwing the ball a ton. It's a good matchup. He's a good start.
Exactly. I mean, all these guys are fantasy relevant, but also seem like really strong starts this week. So I like Brown again. And then one more. What about Robert Woods? Is he the odd man out if Nico plays, or does he also have some value?
Yeah. Okay. I'm finally going to say no to a Texans wide receiver, even in this matchup. Touchdown or bust for Robert Woods, not starting him.
I'll agree with you there because, again, with Brown and Dell and all these guys coming on, and don't forget the tight end Dalton Schultz getting a ton of targets. Yeah, I think Woods is just desperation territory. All right, next up we got the Titans at the Jaguars. It doesn't look like a very different Titans offense anymore, does it? So DeAndre Hopkins, still the number one guy there, but it's done enough to convince you that you still need to start him.
No. I mean, look, that game a few weeks ago where Will Levis threw 4 touchdowns almost feels like it didn't really happen, right? It's been so different since then. Start him only if you need him.
Yeah, so even though the Jags got kind of humiliated on defense, and offense last week, it's still a pretty good defense overall. They have a pass rush. I think Hopkins is a guy, like you said, you can start if you need him, but you don't have to. Now, Kyle Phillips actually led the team in receiving, went in the 60s as far as yardage for 2 weeks in a row. I mean, no, that's not great, but is he streaming candidate?
Yeah, that's about it. Like, you start him if you need him in a PPR league.
Yeah, there you go. In a pinch, you could use him. But look, the team's on bye this week. Not a ton of great receivers, so you probably shouldn't need him. All right, and then Christian Kirk, another solid game. Another solid start.
Yeah, Christian Kirk for me is one of these guys just pretty much set and forget in most cases. Good start this week.
Yep, no reason not to play him. And against the Titans, I'm definitely going to play him. And then there's Calvin Ridley. I mean, do we even want to take a guess here? Is he going to actually do something this week?
Who knows? It's a good matchup against the Titans, but you really don't know what you're going to get. I can only put him in the start him if you need him category.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that he's now like a Gabe Davis type, which is just boom or bust. I feel like he'll be better than last week, which isn't saying much, but I can't guarantee much other than that, so a risky flex. Raiders taking on the Dolphins. Well, we did see Davante Adams look more like himself because they targeted him a ton. Does it happen again this week?
It should. They're going to need him probably in this game. They probably are going to have to throw the ball more than they want, so I think Davante Adams this week is a good start.
Yeah, if Adams can put up numbers against the Jets, he can definitely put up numbers against the Dolphins. They'll need him, like you said, so solid start. Now, Jacoby Myers, on the other hand, just looks unstartable with AOC at quarterback.
Yeah, I can't do it. Touchdown or bust, so not starting him.
No, definitely not. I wouldn't even say in a non-PPR league because he hasn't been scoring lately, so probably just bench him. What about Jalen Waddle? It's like we're still waiting for him to bust out with a huge game. Does it happen this week?
I mean, if it's going to, this could certainly be it against the Raiders. But like you said, I mean, they just have so many weapons here, right? Tyreek Hill, Mostert out of the backfield. Now Achane potentially coming back. But I still think Waddle this week in this matchup is a good start.
Well, I was surprised to find out the Raiders really haven't been very generous to wide receivers this year, not giving up a lot of big games. I don't feel like this is the breakout game for Waddle, but I do feel like he's a guy you pretty much need to have in your lineup because he could always score, make a big play. Then we got the Giants at the Commanders. All right, I think it's pretty safe to say we can skip the Giants receiving core, so let's get to Washington and Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, I still think he's a good start. I mean, I'm throwing last week out the window. Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson were the leading receivers. Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to happen again. I'm still starting Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, you really don't know what to expect from this offense in terms of the skill players. But look, McLaurin put up numbers against the Giants last time. I feel like he'll do it again. In fact, I'm going to go with my hunch that this is a good, maybe great McLaurin week, so I'll say I'm going to start him. And then Jahan Dotson, just after he was scooped up off waivers by a lot of people, gave you absolutely nothing last week. So can you trust him?
You definitely can't trust him, but if you need him, you can start him. He still does have upside.
I mean, it's the Giants. So if you're looking for a flex with upside, he's definitely got it. You just have to know what the risk is, which is he could give you nothing. And then what about Curtis Samuel? Is he on the radar?
Not really. I mean, didn't do anything last week. Might be dealing with this toe injury still. I'm not starting Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, I just don't think he's going to get enough opportunities to make him valuable, even in this matchup, so I'll just pass on Samuel too. Bucks taking on the 49ers on the road. Start with Mike Evans. Another smash game. Should have been even better, except he dropped an easy touchdown for some reason. Is Evans now must start even in this game?
Yeah, Evans, another one of these guys. He's been mostly good this year. I think for the most part, Mike Evans, a very good start this week.
Yeah, and we keep saying that even though the Niners have a great defense, they still do give up points to receivers for the most part. Yeah, Evans, you just pretty much have to start him. Chris Godwin, dealing with an illness. He still got a ton of targets, just didn't do anything last week. Does he bounce back?
Yeah, Godwin's been tough for me to figure out this year, but I think he's still startable.
Yeah, it's hard to just bench him. He's been a little more inconsistent, like you said. He is still startable. It just depends on your other options. All right, then what about Brandon Ayuk? Had a nice game. Now he gets Tampa. Too good to be true?
Maybe. He didn't boom last week like I thought he would, but he still had a nice game, and this is maybe even a better matchup. So, yeah, Brandon Ayuk, a good start this week.
Yeah, this secondary had been terrible. Not going to get fooled by the fact that Tennessee's offense didn't do much against them. Yeah, if I have Brandon Ayuk, I'm starting him. And then Debo did score. Didn't get as many touches, but of course, working his way back from injury. Do you think he gets more involved this week?
Probably, and it's a better matchup against the pass. Debo, one of these guys, I feel like pretty much every week is a pretty good start.
Yeah, you kind of need a reason not to play him, and I don't have a reason this week. If I have Debo, I'm pretty much starting him. Jets going to take on the Bills. Garrett Wilson seems to be getting better as the year goes on. Is he entering almost must-start territory?
I mean, I can't go that high. This isn't, as good of a matchup as he's had the last 2 weeks, but it's also not a terrible matchup. So I think this week Garrett Wilson is startable.
I almost don't care about the matchup because they're just force feeding him the ball, probably because they don't have really any good options. But yeah, I love the target volume, the target share. If I have Wilson, I'm probably just starting him. And then there's good old Gabe Davis. What does he give us this week?
But he gives you every week. Either he booms and you feel great, or he busts and you wish you didn't start him. You want to put him in your lineup? Go for it. Just know what you're getting into.
Well, I know I'm getting into a matchup with the Jets, and he's coming off a couple of bad games in a row, and this Buffalo offense just looks a little lost. I'm not going to risk it with Gabe this week. Seahawks on the road to take on the Rams coming off a bye. Well, DK Metcalf finally had himself a pretty nice game, but that was against the Commanders. Can he do it against the Rams?
Yeah, it was against Commanders, and he also saved his day with that long catch to get him into field goal range. Without that, he was doing almost nothing. Man, I know you see the name DK Metcalf and you just think, oh yeah, you got to start him, but he really hasn't been great this year. He's startable, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he's always startable. It's really hard to know what to do with these Seahawks because, again, every week is so up and down. So I feel like he's still a solid start, but I'm not expecting a huge game. Now, Tyler Lockett coming off a nice game as well. Now, it's been back-to-back good games for him. Do you think that he's a guy you feel better about?
I mean, I probably feel better about him, but there's still risk here because, he can have the games like he's had the last 2 weeks, or he can have those down games, but this isn't a horrible matchup. So, again, I'm going to say he's startable.
Yeah, he did nothing when these teams first met early in the season. Doesn't mean he'll do nothing this week. Again, a guy that you just kind of hate to bench, but you don't always feel great about starting. So it really depends. If you have somebody you feel safer about, you can play him. But for the most part, I still stick with Lockett. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba, well, did not lead the team in receiving last week. He kind of fell back to third again. Do you still feel like he's startable?
Yeah, I'm going to put him more like in the if you need him, you can start him category.
Yeah, again, just kind of hard to know what to do with these guys at this point. So he's a streaming option, but that's about it. And then there's Puka Nacua. Again, sounds like Matt Stafford is back. Does Puka get back to being something close to what he was early in the season?
Probably not, but this isn't a horrible matchup for him. They're at home. I still think Puka this week is startable.
Yeah, I'll put him kind of on the cusp of that wide receiver 3 and 4 range. So I feel like he should have a decent floor, but I just don't know how great he can do. Vikings taking on the Broncos. Josh Dobbs has looked great at quarterback. Jordan Addison still putting up some decent numbers. Do you feel good enough about him that you're rolling him out here? No questions asked.
No, definitely not. I mean, he's putting up decent numbers, but he's not having big games, and Jefferson might be coming back, so I can only put Addison in the start him if you need him category.
Yeah, you got to wonder if JJ comes back as we hope and expect. Is that good or is that bad for Addison? I think it might be good for him this week because, again, Pat Surtain, a really good corner for Denver, would give Jefferson attention. I think Addison is still a solid start. Again, not a guy I think is going to be a great play, but I at least put him in the wide receiver 3 category. And then for Denver, Cortland Sutton keeps scoring touchdowns, got the Vikings. Seems like a solid start.
Yeah, he's been putting up some nice games. It's a good matchup. I can't say like a good start or a must start, but he's definitely startable.
Yeah, again, better in a non-PPR league just because he doesn't get a ton of yardage and maybe a ton of catches, and he just keeps getting in the end zone. So I think he's always playable. And then what about Jerry Jeudy?
Yeah, don't feel nearly as good. If you need him, you can start him.
Yeah, coming off another kind of typical Jerry Jeudy disappointing game. I'm never getting excited about Jeudy. I know the matchup is good, but I still would rather not if I didn't have to. And then Monday night, we're treated to the Eagles and the Chiefs. So let's talk Davante Smith. What do you think he'll do?
I really like him this week. No Dallas Goedert in a game they're probably going to have to throw the ball a lot. Should be a lot of points in this one. I know it's a good Chiefs secondary. I know it's a good defense, but I'm banking on the volume and the offense he's in. I think Devonta Smith this week is a good start.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs' pass defense has definitely been better than last year, but Devontae Smith is too good. Like you said, Goddard out. I feel like he's still a very solid start. You pretty much need to start him if you got him. What about Rashee Rice? Not as easy for him on the other side.
No, but one thing about the Eagles' defense is they have been fantastic against the run, not as good against the pass. And again, I think this is going to be, let's hope it's a high-scoring, entertaining game. He's got touchdown upside. I think he's startable.
I kind of view him as like a slightly lesser version of Cortland Sutton. Like, you're hoping for a touchdown, and he's got a good chance to score a touchdown, but you know he's not going for huge yardage or getting a ton of catches. So he's always a guy that you can flex and feel okay about. All right, that's our take on all the wide receivers that matter for Week 11. Don't forget, we got you covered with everything else you need to win right here in this playlist with start, sit advice, waiver wire trade, and more.